Page 520, continuing lesson 8.6. We're talking about now the idea about factoring out greatest common factor. So we've mentioned that's something we should look for, but we've not had to do it yet. If you look at this on problem 4, if you look at the numbers, all those numbers have a 3 in common. So that means we can factor a 3 out before we start doing this problem. And that's, again, what it says at the top. If we have this factored completely, we have to have the GCF factored out. If you don't have the GCF factored out, it's not considered completely correct. Another bonus about that is if you factor out the GCF, you have smaller numbers to work with, which means you don't have so many options for things to try. So on this one, if you factor the 3 out, then you'll get to this point, and then we can just start working through and figuring out how this factors until we get to the answer here. So if you look at it, got it 4. Same idea, always first thing should be looking for a greatest common factor. So if you look at those numbers with 8, 36, and 20, these numbers all have a 4 in common. So we could factor out a 4. And that would leave us with 2x squared minus 9x minus 5. And then we're going to try to factor that. So with 2x squared, it has to be 2x and x. This is a minus 5, so we know one has to be positive and one has to be negative. I'm going to put the negative in the second binomial because we've got a pretty big negative number here. And then I'm going to go with 5 and 1. And if you look at the middle terms, then that would be minus 10x plus 1x gives us our minus 9x. So this would be our answer. So this problem a little different. There's not a greatest common factor here other than 1. The issue on this problem is we have a negative squared term. And so what we're going to do, just to make it easier for us, more consistent with what we've been doing, is we're going to factor out a negative 1 first. We factor out a negative 1, basically that's just changing the signs of everything. Okay? It just makes it a lot more familiar, a lot easier for us to factor this out if we do it that way. It would be 2x and x. One needs to be positive, one needs to be negative. I'm going to try 5 and 4. And I did 5 and 4 versus 4 and 5 because if I'd put the 4 with the 2, that would give me a GCF there. I can't have that. So this is minus 8x plus 5x gives me minus 3x, so that works. Okay, so anytime if you have a negative in front of your squared term, I would recommend factoring out a negative 1 first and then factoring it into the two binomials.